Hello, welcome to Lunchtime BABLing. My name is Shea. I'm the CEO of BABL AI, a company that audits algorithms for bias, ethical risk, and effective governance. So today I'm joined by our sales guru, or I guess VP of Sales, Bryan. Bryan, how's it going?
Yeah, everything's pretty good. Happy to be on here first time, so happy to talk a little bit of AI and business and sales. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. This is one of those things that when I first founded Babbel, I had no clue. Actually, I still have no clue. But sales was definitely not my thing. I'm way too honest. I don't want to imply that sales is dishonest. I would be way too self-deprecating when it came to sales stuff, and so I'm glad I can learn from people like you how to not to be too self-deprecating when I talk about our services or products or myself. But in any case, welcome to the podcast. So let me first invite you to introduce yourself a little bit, and then I think we should just jump in then and talk shop.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just on the sales methodology, sales generally, we're here to help people solve their problems. So, the honesty thing, what I originally got attracted to Babbel with is just we're here to help people. And, we provide a service that really meets a need in the market that's just starting to be made aware by a lot of businesses. So getting that message out and reaching people and business owners and making sure that what we are able to do for those enterprises is really what drew me into Babbel. My background, obviously, we met up through the University of Iowa through the mentoring program there. So been with Babbel for a couple of years, kind of in the background, and generally working with businesses of all different types. I've had a couple of myself, currently a C-suite member for another organization as well. So love sales, love marketing, love getting good products to people, and ultimately, solving those problems for businesses. So yeah, I'm excited to help.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have the help. All right. So what should we talk about today? I think there's too much stuff. So can we narrow it down to something that we're going to provide value?
Yeah, so I always like to think about, who are we talking to? Who's the customer, right? That's always my frame. So, like you were saying, you don't have a ton of, sales background and knowledge there. I think I'd have a good business owner perspective, but maybe I don't have that same sort of lens that you would have from like AI, governance, bias, all the things that Babel brings. So I think it would be really beneficial for business owners on this to kind of hear this message, but hoping we can ask some questions that would really kind of draw out some of the gaps and different things that businesses and business owners and decision makers maybe aren't aware of that Babel can help out with. So, everybody's trying to get AI into their organizations. There's so much benefit, so much upside for it. And the first question I have for you is, put yourself in that business owner's seat, and they're over here. Hey, I want AI in my company. I want to do this. I want to go fast. I want to stay competitive. But what are a lot of blind spots that you see that business owners may be overlooking when considering implementing AI through their business?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I feel like the blind spots have evolved over time. So early on, a pretty significant blind. I mean, they're still all there. Let me put it that way. It's just that awareness has evolved over time, and in one case, in particular, regulatory risk is just now emerging. But I think early on, it was reputational risk is really a blind spot. I think people early on felt like AI was a great buzzword, and um, they felt like this is a good selling point. So they really push this narrative of they have artificial intelligence in their product, or they use advanced machine learning. And as starting around 2017 and on, even before then, but 2017 is where it really started ramping up. people just became very aware of the fact that typical machine learning systems have some significant limitations, bias being a large one, and bias could lead to discrimination. So bias mean, simply put, it just works less effectively for some groups of people than others. There are other kinds of bias that don't involve people, but that's the one typically people will care about. And so there's a significant risk of the AI doing something, saying something in the case of natural language, that is just going to cause your customers or cause the public to either be offended or to infringe on their rights. And I think that causes a significant reputational risk. So I think people are now aware of that. I think that's, or maybe, like, I don't know, speaking from the average business owner, maybe they're not aware of that, but they should be aware of the fact that if you have AI out there interacting in some way or making decisions about people or interacting with people, that there's reputational risk there, because if it does something inappropriate, that's a problem. Now, along those same lines, there's a trust problem. If you're thinking about just from a business perspective, you want your clients or customers to trust you and to trust that you have their best interests in mind and that you have a quality product. The use of AI, which by definition is sort of automated in most cases, there are chances that you are going to kind of infringe on that trust in a way. Like if something happens and you're not aware of it, it's like you start giving bad advice if you have a chatbot, or if you start making bad predictions, you're going to erode that trust. And I think that's a blind spot that I think people are looking at the shiny sort of sales cycle side of AI, where it's like, hey, we got an awesome product, but the long-term value of your product depends on that trust. And that's a one serious error, like a risk that could happen. Now, all of this is wrapped up in this blind spot of we can just implement AI and we don't have to change anything about our organization in terms of governance and how we manage risk. And it's become very obvious that that is not the case. And in fact, that leads to to regulatory risk, because now there are lots of laws coming out that are going to require that kind of governance. So those are sort of I think the major blind spots, is that reputational risk, eroding trust of your clients and customers, regulatory risk, and sort of a lack of governance to manage all of those risks.
Yeah. You were saying that with the reputational risk, maybe people aren't aware. I know we've had this conversation before, but I really think it is similar to like cybersecurity back when that was just becoming a thing, right? And we're still dealing with tremendous amounts of data in an automated capacity here. But all those, nobody wants to be a headline, right? So, finding the ways to protect yourself from becoming a headline and those things for the reputational thing is absolutely, I think, a huge blind spot, because they're not even, I would imagine most business owners probably aren't even aware of how the AI could even create those situations, right? They're looking at dollars saved and, payroll saved and those types of things, efficiency gain. So definitely good call out there. So just kind of to build off of that, so I've kind of both angles on here. So say there are companies that don't currently have AI in their business, and they're trying to figure out, a governance strategy. Because I think a governance strategy is really what can mitigate a lot of the reputational, the trust, the regulatory concerns. So if businesses don't have a regulatory or a governance strategy, what are a couple of suggestions that they should look at first? Like, what are the kind of the foundational layers of a governance strategy?
Yeah. So I'll repeat some stuff that I've sort of, anybody who follows my work will have heard many, many times. But any kind of governance really it boils down, actually anything, period, in a business or an organization, boils down to people, the things that they do, and the tools that they use to do those things, right? And so under that sort of logic, you have to have people. And so the very first thing is somebody has to have the responsibility, or some group of people has to have the responsibility for this. So let's assume that's done. You might have a chief compliance officer. If you're SME, maybe you just have a member of the team who's thinking about these sorts of things. The next step is to know where the AI is. And so inventory, constructing the inventory is the second priority, because you can't do anything unless you know. And so figure out where you're using AI, let's say in your product, or what kind of AI is your team using, because there are risks associated with both of those, including privacy risks and all of that. And so getting that inventory is the next step. And then in terms of governance, I think there's a triage process of figuring out what's the risk, right? And so this is where you start needing to get some help, because understanding where those risks are is something that it takes subject matter expertise. That's why people hire us, for instance, is because they don't know how to do that. And so either, educate yourself or go get help to figure out where are the risks associated with these particular systems that we have, and what level of risk might there be. We call this a risk assessment, but it's not a risk assessment like a typical enterprise risk management risk assessment, because a lot of those risks are nuanced and related to the type of AI. And for regulatory reasons, they also have to be outwardly focused. Like, you have to worry about your customers and their fundamental rights, and making sure that these systems don't infringe upon those. So it's a special kind of beast. It's not an ordinary risk assessment. And so once you have that, then you basically have an itemized list of the AI systems you have, the risks that they pose, and hopefully, if you do the risk assessment right, you also have a list of sort of the knobs you can turn to control those risks. The next step is to set up policies and procedures that are going to make sure that those knobs are in the right place, controls that you have in place to mitigate those risks. And now after that, there's a ton of other things, right? But that's like, if I were just starting out, if I were a business owner, I would just find somebody to be responsible for this, identify all your systems, and then start doing a risk assessment and identifying the risks, and begin to put in mitigation measures. Everything else after that is sort of like, details, important details, but they're kind of minor compared to that first layer that you need to start.
Yeah, it's a nice setup for the next question, but I think that bit of information, if you haven't heard that before, is probably eye-opening, because it is some core foundational things, people, process, and procedure, right? To really be thoughtful and intentional about how you're going to use AI. So if you don't have it, that's a really awesome answer, and we can help. A lot of information out there as well. So then level that question up. Say you do have a governance strategy. What are common opportunities that you're seeing and we're seeing to improve those governance strategies? How can we improve what's already in place if they do have it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So clearly, there are most mature organizations have governance already built. So, and in some cases, like for financial services, they have algorithm-specific governance, model risk management, which is something that is required by federal regulators for banks to have, and people who invest money. They have to manage those models because there's risk to the financial system if they don't manage those models. So, and then there's ordinary enterprise risk management systems, which is just managing risk of all kinds, right? And those are very mature processes. So if you're an organization that has those mature processes, what you should be doing is trying to leverage that for AI. Now, this is not something that you can just bolt on to an enterprise risk management system. It's not a separate thing, and you're not maximizing the return on your already probably significant investment in developing this enterprise risk management or model risk management. So what you need to do is try to integrate it throughout the system. So what does that mean? That means starting to build awareness. That's training, really. It's like, find those people in that enterprise risk management system or model risk management system or whatever system you've got for risk management or compliance, and start educating them Say, do you want to take a course? Do you want to get some extra training? Do you want to go to this conference? Do you want to start reading up on these regulations or the best practices? Get them educated. And it's going to be a hard process because in a large organization, that's difficult to do. So having somebody, that person responsible, whoever that is, that step always has to be there. They need to start thinking about how do we start diffusing that. So there's a couple of different ways. One is sort of a centralized, where you have a centralized function, which would be like AI governance. And that function, everything runs through that function. So if there's some AI system, a risk assessment has to go through that function. And they do a risk assessment and they manage all of that risk. That's possible, and we've seen a lot of organizations do that. A different method is much more federated, which means every unit is going to have their own risk management, but we're going to integrate the AI governance into that unit. It's not going to be centralized. There might be a central office which provides resources, but the individual risk assessments and the managing of those risks are federated, and they're based on locally where the AI lives. I think that's the long game is getting that to work, I think, because a centralized office should really just be making sure that everybody's educated, everybody knows what to do, and it's a heavy lift to have it go all through that central office. So this federated system where you make sure it's integrated into your risk management system is the long game, the better way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I feel like the central office doesn't exist as much as it used to, right? a lot more spread out these days. Love that. So those are some great areas to focus on, right, and draw some attention to to those needs. So thinking of roles within the organization, I know we've had this ask a couple of times, can we help an AI compliance team that's internal for an enterprise? So what's your opinion on these organizations with their own internal AI compliance team, and maybe where are some limitations to what that AI compliance team could, run into, I suppose?
Yeah, so I think having your own internal team is necessary, or it will eventually be necessary. You can get away with having a sort of a fractional compliance team. I think people have even asked us if we can play that role, and I think that's something we could do, where we come in and we know what to do quickly, and we can sort of triage problems and do that role. But long term, people will need to have internal functions. So what are the limitations? The limitations are training is hard. So just building that team is hard. Not a lot of people have specialization in this at the moment. I mean, we're working to try to train people for these sorts of things, but you don't get a university degree in AI governance, at least not now. I mean, there are some programs starting. So that's difficult to find the right people and have the right training. So even if you've built a team, typically there are people who've transitioned from other things. And so you will need to make sure they are trained, and you need to find resources for training them. That's a limitation. Now, the other limitation is there are certain things that they just can't do because you need external assurance or verification. So if you're a vendor that makes some AI product and an enterprise company says, what are you doing to make sure you're compliant with this law or this best practice, you can say that our internal team does this and that. But some enterprise organizations, and in some case, you'll be legally required to have third parties who are external come in and evaluate and make sure that you are actually doing those things. And so that's something that you just can't do with an internal team. Now, you can have an internal audit function, which is somewhat independent and maybe reports to the board. That's something that is good to have. But at the end of the day, there will be some aspects of this sort of infrastructure of trust, which is a term that For Humanity, a nonprofit that I'm part of, uses a lot. There's going to be parts of that have to come from external validation from another organization. And so this is why one aspect of what we focus on is auditing and assurance engagements around this to sort of provide that external assurance that people are doing what they say they're doing and what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so just to draw a comparison for maybe like terms or similar functions, right? It'd be like an internal accounting team would be the same as a compliance team. Then you have an external audit team come in to, make sure that everything's on the up and up, right? So I think that's draw similarities out there. So yeah, and that's a great point. And obviously, what we do here at BABL is bring that level of trust and reassurance and help build that infrastructure of trust, as you mentioned, with that third-party audit. And I think you answered the next question, but just to be specific, when you work with a third-party auditing firm like us, what is the real value that we bring, that BABL would bring to the organization?
Yeah. Well, I think if we're talking about audit and assurance engagements, I think there's a sort of abstract value beyond just the fact that we're BABL, right? Anybody doing this, it provides a level of trust. Like you're able to go to your clients and customers and say, don't just take our word for it. We've been sort of validated externally. We have external assurance that we are doing the things that we say we're doing, right? And that's not something in the AI space, that's not something that happens very often, I should say. This is a very new thing. Regulatory assurance and assurance in general has been around for a very long time, and audit has been around for a very long time. But in the AI space, it's relatively new and relatively rare, and there are not many people who do it. So this brings in BABL's value, is that BABL is very specifically focused on this, and we are known for auditing. And so, for a company of our size, we punch way above our weight in terms of sort of name recognition with regulators internationally and in the U.S., and in terms of academic output and rigor in which we bring. That's different. That's not something you can find with any old company that puts up a shingle online. So I think you're bringing not just that external assurance, you're bringing the fact that we are experts in this. We don't just do it, we do research in this area, we publish in this area, we push the boundaries, and we're bringing, we're developing the field as we're going. We're helping to really push the frontier of what this means. And I think that's the real value, is that you're not just getting an auditor coming in to do something. You're getting somebody who has thought very deeply about this and is looking at all the angles and trying to figure out, how does this benefit everybody involved, both the businesses, the society, and the people that interact with these AI systems. Yeah,
and the word I kind of thought of as you were saying is we create an ability to be transparent with customers for organizations. I think transparency is really important for those customers. So if you're out communicating that you're working with third-party independent auditing firms and they have that rigor that BABL brings, I think that creates more trust. But then, as all these organizations look to employ AI, there's going to be the ones that do it the cheap and fast way, and there's going to be the ones that do it the right way and take that high value, high margin position. And I think that's where customers ultimately are going to try to strive to get to, right? They want transparency. They want to know that their companies they're working with have their best interests in mind. I think that's important for a lot of customers these days. So it's kind of an offshoot of the question, but we have these new regulatory legislations coming online. So the most popular one right now and kind of the talk is the EU AI Act. I'm curious, what's the value businesses would gain from being early adopters of some of the EU AI Act policy, along the same lines of working with a third-party consulting or auditing firm like us? What's the value that a business could gain from adopting those?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because everybody does talk about the negative effects of regulation and the stifling of innovation and all of that. And so it is a legit question, like how could you benefit a business benefit? And I think the clear answer is trust. I mean, it is an offshoot of the last question, because trust is value in a future that's run on algorithms and artificial intelligence. I mean, trust is value anyway in ordinary business situations, but when you're talking about the future, project 10 years into the future, when we have smart cities, we have autonomous vehicles, we've got algorithms making decisions very rapidly, deciding who gets resources, who gets jobs. I mean, a lot of that's already happening. But in the future, where that's integrated into every aspect of our society, what business is going to win when I have two businesses in front of me offering the same product, and there's going to be automation involved where things can happen at scale and so can problems? I'm going to go with the business that I trust, the brand that I trust. And trust is built on trustworthiness. And so people who are focusing on building AI and services around trustworthy AI, like that's what EU AI Act is sort of geared towards, is going to build that trust with their client base, and the upside potential could be huge. I mean, I think we're already seeing, I open my inbox and all I see is like, we have this AI tool for lead generation or for hiring people or for whatever, right? Most of it, I'm just whatever. I don't know they don't say anything about what their tool is. They don't tell me what they're doing to make sure that they're compliant with regulations or that they're being fair to people or any of that. I'm not going to engage with just rhetoric around AI. It has to be built on trust. So businesses that are thinking now, oh, do I want to invest in making sure I'm compliant with the EU AI Act now, or do I push it off and see what happens? I think the upside potential of being one of the early adopters and demonstrating that you don't just care about being compliant with the regulation, but you want to make sure you do it right and that trustworthy AI is at the core of your business model, those are the companies that are going to win, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but for me, looking at 10 years down the road, I want to work with companies that have cared about this from the beginning.
Yeah, and I always like to, again, look at other similar type of movements, we'll call them. So like sustainability is an interesting one here. So companies that got an early adoption of sustainability gained a lot of value for their brand. And, ultimately, we've said trust, transparency, reputational harm. That trust is going to be a differentiator, right, for businesses and brands. If I can trust you, I want to do business with you. And ultimately, I think it's a market share grab. You can promote it, you can advertise it, and also adopt the technology and do it the right way. So I think also you're not going to be spending all the time, effort, and energy playing catch up 2 years down the road, because companies that adopt early are already there. So you're already behind the curve as well. But I think that big thing of trust is going to be a huge differentiator. I agree. And to your point of, you just get emails in your inbox all day, every day from, I do this, I have the product for this. It's noise. So like what stands out is that trust, right? And people probably really latch on to brands that they can trust. So I like that and agree with that. That's all I have for questions, honestly, for this one.
Well, these are good. I mean, I think for me, it's great to have an outside perspective, because I think about this all the time, and for me, in some sense, it's almost too easy. Like for me, I just see what's important because I'm thinking about the regulations, I'm thinking about the risks. We do risk assessments all the time, we audit all the time. And so for me, I take a lot of things for granted that people just know all this stuff. And so it's great to have somebody who comes from a real business perspective, from the business owner, to be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. How does this affect me? That's refreshing for me. And I think we need to always step back and say, what are the people not understanding? about this, and how can we better communicate that? So I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, and I hope the questions that I always try to think, like I said, like a business owner. So I've owned businesses. I participate at kind of that executive level. We're putting AI in some of the other organizations I'm with, and these are things that I certainly would not be thinking about had I not been working with Babel, right? It's Chat GPT, drop an OpenAI API in, and we're good to go. We now have AI in our company, and look at how much awesome stuff it can do, and then oops, here comes regulation, and now I have to backtrack, and it's identifying and eliminating problems before they become real problems is a huge way to scale efficiencies and really make your business hum. But nobody likes to go backwards. But yeah, I love these types of conversations as well, and just learning about how AI works and how it's going to impact future business. And it's a really exciting time for entrepreneurs, business owners, enterprise. And there's so much that the tools allow you to do. And I just would say, as long as you're doing them in the way that makes sense and in a way that keeps everyone safe, we have a really awesome, bright future in terms of what new things we'll be able to have as just humanity, I think. It's a really interesting time.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we do what we do. I focus on risk so much when I'm talking publicly, but I do that because I see the potential of AI to affect humanity positively. And Babel's mission is to make sure that impact and all of the efforts really prioritize human flourishing. And so we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't see the potential positive impacts. So thanks everybody for listening. We have courses. If you want training in this, I don't often plug these, but if you want training, we have courses. There'll be a code down below with probably some kind of discount. You can look in the comments. We also audit, and we have consulting services. So please reach out if you want. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That really helps us out. If you're listening to this on a podcast, thank you for listening. We appreciate you taking time with us. And we'll see you again on the next Lunchtime Babbling.